Building a new Keezer. The existing Keezer's got 8 cornies in, it's twice the size of this. This one's going to be ideal for 4, and then either for a few cans in here just to quickly cool them, or I'm thinking of putting a water reservoir similar to, I don't know, a water carrier, and then recirculate water into the fermenters when the 60-litre fermenters turn up. But this video is about making this into a Keezer. Now, I know the length from here to here is 101 centimetres, perfect, and the width is 52.5. So as with the other Keezer, I'm going to raise this up so there's a collar around it like this, with the taps and possibly an STC 1000. But unlike the other one, I'm going to have the taps on the end, up, boom, here. Now the reason for that is having the taps along the front does cause, in the other Keezer, a lot of clutter, and similarly having the secondary regulators on the back also causes quite a lot of congestion here, making getting the kegs in and out quite difficult. So if I have the taps here, and on the back here a 4-way regulator, and then the gas line going out, I'm going to keep the CO2 tank on this one outside, because there's no real room. It could possibly go in here, but again it's going to make it more congested, and I'd need to raise this probably a little bit further. So on this external CO2 tank, I might even just take it from here and run a line into the other Keezer, plug it into the other Keezer. Go, what a rebel. So first we need to think about getting a frame built. I've got nice big chunky bits of wood, and this is about 1 1/4 titch, this is about 1 1/4, so the frame should fit nicely all around here. Yeah, this was a table, so I need to take these runners off and then cut this down to 101 minus 2 lots of its own width to go on the end, because the end bit I don't want the grain to be sticking out that way. I want the grain to be sticking out that way. So 2 side bits at 52.5, and then 101 minus whatever the width is. Let's get those cut and ready. So I've chopped it down, and these, hadn't realised they're not just screwed on, they're also channeled in. So I made a bit of a mess getting some of those out, but doesn't really matter. It's on the inside, not going to be seen. Now, could just screw it. I decided to drill it and then just use doweling pegs with glue. So it's glued up, and then with doweling pegs hammered in as well with the mallet. You'll probably find it's not totally square, but we can fix that in post-edit. If it doesn't work, you'll never see. Next, we need to prepare the lid, and this does not look manky in this light. I'm going to try some T-cut and other stuff on there, but we need to take these off. In my experience, forget a screwdriver. Screwdrivers will never work on these. They'll just open the end of the screws out. Now this, I don't know if you can see, probably not very well because I've left the camera in not very good sort of mode, are lift off hinges, and that means you can leave the screws in there, just it keeps it neat, looking neat. So I've taken those, obviously those shitty plastic covers off. We don't need those, we won't even need those when it goes back on, unless they're really good, but they're not, so they're not going on. And now that will just lift off. I'm going to do it with 2 hands, and then the hinges will go ping, like that, ping, just like that, as if by magic. Now I'm going to give all this a bit of a clean up, I think, because it's a bit minging. Not sure what's happened there. Now we don't need these to screw into here again, so just for, as I said, neatness, I've put those bolts back in. This obviously is going to be screwed onto the frame. Let's see how the frame's doing. Well, it's the right shape. Part of the reason I wanted to use doweling pins in here instead of screws is that I'm going to need to round this off to follow the profile of the freezer, because the freezer's got rounded sides. And what I didn't want was either to expose the screw head. I could really have screwed it into like that and then put these plugs in, but this is glued here and these are glued in here, and I'm going to sand it down and round it, so any of this that is exposed won't look too bad. Actually it won't be, will it? Taps are going here. So I think it was a good idea to use doweling, because this is going to need, sorry about the flickery light, this is going to need quite a bit of profiling around there just to nicen it off a little bit. Yeah, quite a lot, but it fits, it'll do the job. And this is how the hinges shall be reattached. So all we've literally done is just raise the whole thing by 5 inches, and we'll be back in a bit when I've reprofiled this. All was going quite well until I noticed that there was a massive split along here, which will have been where I was knocking these out earlier with the hammer. I managed to split, so I'm just gluing it now before continuing with the belt sander to round off our corners. I think I've got the radius probably not far out. While I'm waiting for the frame to dry and finish, I've just run the little hand sander around the edge of here, just get rid of some of those dusty bits. Now the reason for that is not to clean it up, in fact it's the opposite, it's to rough it up. I don't know if we can see on here, it's no longer nice and shiny because we're going to put some strong adhesive on here. This, I mean, it is a bit, it's not really been looked after much, this freezer, but I'll tell you what, it's not been plugged in all day and it's still bloody cold in there, so it works, and that is the main thing. So any freezer that you can get your hands on from Free Cycle or Facebook Market or eBay or something like that, any freezer will pretty much do. I was lucky with this one in that I got one that fits those 4 corny kegs perfectly. It couldn't have worked better. So next we'll come back to the frame. Need to work out where the taps go, because there's 4 taps going in here. I've got a 30 centimetre nice 30 centimetre space here. So the centre line, 5mm each side, is the start. That gives us 1, 2, 3, 4. Measure your centre line before rounding the edges next time, Martin, because otherwise you won't be able to get your tape measure there. So I had to measure it across here, put a line up with set square, and then take it across. All of this will obviously just sand out. Starting to get a bit dark outside, so I have moved it in, old towel over the top. This is cleaned up quite well. Need to do this edge next, but I've got a coat of varnish on. Now I'm only using the good old Wix floor varnish, and the reason for that is it's still a polyurethane varnish, but it's waterborne. It's not going to be outside. It's going to take a few knocks. You'd expect it to. It's floor varnish, and I've used it on quite a few things. I've used it on here, quite a few things. I should really have used a polyurethane. Actually, no, I didn't. I used a spirit-based polyurethane on top of that, but the rest of it is just done in this. Good stuff. So all the sanding pretty much done. I'm going to give it about 3 or 4 coats of that, but for tonight I'm just going to let this harden up. You can put a couple of coats on within a couple of hours of this, but I'm just going to let it soak in overnight and call it a day. Come back tomorrow. But before then, I've got myself a little treat for being such a good boy today. Good morning. The morning after. It's not a bad day out there. This has had overnight to just harden off. It's only had 1 coat. I'm just going to give it a very light, and I mean light as well, rub over with a sanding pad. Very, very fine sanding pad, just to smooth this off, and then give it another coat of that trade floor paint. This has now had 3 coats of varnish, and it's time to attach it. And the way we do that, as I've previously roughed it up a bit in it, with a very coarse grit sand pad. So this is now ready to take the adhesive, and the one that I'm using is called Sticks Like, well, yeah. And first off, we need to stick a bead all the way around to outside. It doesn't need a huge amount because this is really strong silicone adhesive. Next, we have to line that up and lower it onto here. A little bit of squeeze out down there, which I smoothed off with a gloved finger. Now, to keep this as compressed down as possible, we're going to pop the lid back on. Now, I've lined this up so that this edge is fairly flush, this edge is fairly flush, but this is where it shows my cornering wasn't quite as good. So I'm tempted to hoik it all over this way a little bit to stick this out a little bit further. Oh, that didn't work. It doesn't really matter. Nobody ever really noticed, apart from everybody who watches this video. Now, so we now have the frame in place, framed it in place, and then I'm going to pop a couple of buckets of water up here just to add some weight to it. We don't want it massively squished down, but just enough to give it that bit of downward pressure, so that as this sets, it's all nicely squished. Oh, I don't know if I use some of these technical terms. And then we wait 24 hours. And somewhat ironically, my OCD is really gonna kick in with that, but fuck it. It's for dispensing alcohol. The more alcohol is dispensed, the less my OCD will care. Right, so back when it is stuck like that. F for fittings, boys and girls. And for flipping heck, I've earned that coffee today with one finger and another. Right, these are what goes into them holes, what I did make. Okay, so that goes into the hole, and then that screws, don't roll away, stay there. That screws onto there, and then there's a little tube. This is a reducer. This is 3/8, this is 3/16 reducer. That goes all the way to the keg, and then that then goes on keg. So that's the dispensing part. And this is the gas in. So what I have here, I've got a 4-way manifold somewhere. This connects onto the gas in of the keg, and then a nice 3/8, yeah, I think so, whatever, gas line goes to this. No, it doesn't go to that. Goes to the regulator. You fool, yes you are. People say, how do you tighten these? Well, there are these handy little things like this. Now all of this comes from a company called BrewKegTap. Where is it? There you go. Oh, www.brewkegtap.co.uk. Not bad zoom. They do a complete kit, which is your gas regulator, 2 corny kegs, 2 taps, 2 lots of everything. So all you need to provide is your Keezer bit, which is what I've just shown you, and a gas bottle. The best place to find a gas bottle is look at your local welding supplies, or look at your local do gas hire. Search for gas hire. In Sheffield we have got somewhere called gas hire, not too far from here either, and it's 60 quid for the tank and gas, I think, and £16 for a refill. You take the empty one back, they give you a full one. The morning after, the night before, what we're going to do, get those shutters open, take the buckets off, take the lid off and have a look. Well, that's all right then. I need to get a couple of locking feet for the trolley, and build perhaps a little frame around there just to hold it onto the trolley. Not that I think it's going to be going right far when it's got 4 kegs in there. It's 80 kilos, or 76-ish kilos. Next, and this will sound strange, now I've just taken the lid off, I'm going to put the lid back on and weight it a little bit so we can attach the hinges at the back. Just chipboard screws holding those hinges on, because there's no real need for strength. And there we have, zoom out, and it will hold itself perfectly well down. So that now pretty much for the physical build is done. Next then is to attach these. Now this is what screws onto the tap. This is just a pretty bit to spread the force on the outside. So take that nut off, push that through the hole, do that nut up, and all of a sudden you have all of the tap connectors in place. Now the thing with these is I've drilled 25mm holes through here to give us a little bit of wiggle room, because sometimes you might not get the hole directly straight. So with a little bit of wiggle room, when you tighten it, this collar will make sure it is perfectly square. Next, we attach these to the back of the whatever it is called. Now you don't need to use PTFE tape on here because the seal is formed between that rubber washer in there and the face here. So all the thread does is pull it onto there, and it's quite easy to cross thread it, so it should just go on. It won't take any force whatsoever. Hand tight is absolutely fine, and then with this little thing just slots on there, and you can give it a tiny little extra, probably no more than a quarter of a turn. It doesn't slide on like a spanner. You need, it doesn't push on like that. You need to slide it over so that it can get a grip on the girth, and then finally use the right end and that is probably just enough to create that rubber seal. It doesn't need to be torqued up like massively tight, it's unnecessary. This little tool from BrewKegTap has these little sticky outy bits, and that is for tightening up the connector onto the tap. Why don't I actually do it and show you? This is how the tap arrives. As you'll see, there's a thread there. This thread locks into that thread in here. So all you need to do is hold this in place and tighten that finger tight here. Look, I'm doing it one-handed. No, I'm not doing it one-handed. Now when tightening this, you'll feel a certain place where this will lock into position, or you could lock it into position that way or that way. I think it's probably a good idea to have it locked into position that way and then continue tightening that onto there, and that then is attached. The tool, where have I put the tool? Do you ever do that thing where you go to do something and you put something down, just not thinking about it, not conscious that you're actually going to need that in the next couple of seconds? Yeah, that's right. So this is where that locks into there. Not very good one-handed to do this, and just tightens it. You don't even need two hands for that. Now that's spun the whole assembly, which means I might need to tighten this nut a little bit more, but it'll be easier now that the tap's in place. So now we can go ahead and put the rest of those taps in and just tighten those back nuts if we need to. Quick little tip. I've arranged this so that these handles do not protrude above the level of the final positioning of the lid. Now the reason for that is you don't accidentally want to knock that handle on. As an added fail-safe, there are these springs which can be purchased. I'm not sure if BrewKegTap do them. If they don't, I'm sure they will do soon. I think I got these from AliExpress, but these just push in here and the small end pushes against the ball in there, so it will then force that back like this. So if you do accidentally nudge it, it doesn't stay on. Now if you get it in the right sort of way, you can still have it so the tap stays on if you do it gently, but just nudging it, how about that? Oops, oops, keg full of beer on the floor. Not keg full of beer on the floor, but will stay open to pour. I haven't got another tap at the moment. I'm going to need to rob one from somewhere. And here's where the magic happens. Now, I know the natural question to ask is, why are these coiled up like this? Why not just take a line from here to the tap? Now the reason being, foaming. If you want to pull a glass full of foam, have a nice short lead. One of the ways to combat foaming in a glass is to have the reducer from 5/8 to 5/16. Is that right? Whatever it is anyway. 3/8, 3/16, whatever. But it's the length also, girls, that does make a difference. Both of these are just over 5 foot, sorry, all four of these are just over 5 foot long. And that, in my experience, is about the perfect length to reduce foaming. The only other thing that I always try to do is this. And I know it might seem obvious. 1, 2, 3, 4. But here's the thing. When a keg kicks and you want to replace it, it's usually because you've been drinking it. It's very easy after a couple of glasses of falling over water not to realise which one goes where. So it's just a little aid memoir to go to the correct tap, even though it's backwards. So that now, apart from gas, is the complete setup for a Keezer. But wait, I hear you ask. All right, I didn't, but you should. What you should have said is, but wait, how do you try to make these videos more interesting, you know? How do you control the temperature inside? Because do you remember I mentioned about this in my main Keezer? Is an STC 1000, and you control the temperature. You set the temperature you want, and as it gets warm and exceeds the temperature you've set, it kicks in and turns the freezer on. Now, I wanted to make a video that anyone could really follow, make their own Keezer. So far, I don't think any particular skills have been necessary, but I do know that electrics can sometimes freak people out. So in order to circumvent that, what I have done, instead of using an STC 1000, I'm using one of these Inkbird ITC 308 Wi-Fi's. And I'm sorry, because of the way the camera works, it's going to flicker like mad. But I've set this for 6 degrees. It's currently 8.3 degrees. And I can control this via, should I so desire, that's sad, control it via my phone, via the Wi-Fi. Now what happens is this plugs into the socket, and then the freezer plugs into here. And this does exactly the same as the STC 1000. When it reaches the temperature, it turns the freezer off, and when it gets hotter, it turns the freezer back on. It controls the temperature that way. So there's no wiring involved, and I'll put a link below to this on Amazon. You can probably get it cheaper elsewhere. If you buy it from the link I've put below, I ought to just warn you, they give me some money. I don't know how much, probably about 10p or something, but I don't know. It's one of those affiliate links. But I like people to know that. It doesn't make it any more expensive, it just means I get a kickback. So also from this comes a little temperature lead. So I've drilled a tiny hole in here, and that comes through to the side there, and then down and just into an empty bottle of Prosecco. Well, it's not empty because I filled it with water. So the probe goes into there. The probe is waterproof because they're designed for aquariums, etc. That then knows that everything in here, generally speaking, is going to be about the same temperature. Now, in the big Keezer, I did put some fans in there, some computer fans, just to circulate the air. They bust ages ago, and I've noticed no difference since. And for simplicity, I'm going to keep this as is. So what have we got? We've got 2 kits, although if you was doing a simple Keezer with just 2 corny kegs. 1 kit from BrewKegTap, which includes your taps, shanks, absolutely everything you need, your kegs, your gas lines and a regulator. All you need to provide is the gas bottle. We've got a bit of wood, which I found dumped on the side of the road. Didn't mention that before. It's part of an old table. It's really well made. Whoever that maker is there, it was really well made. I have to give them credit for it. So bit of 5-inch thick wood. You could use bits of joist. I think the last time I used spare bits from up here where we strengthened up there. Freezer, which you can either get from FreeCycle or Facebook Marketplace or whatever. Next to nothing most of the time. And then an ITC this, what is it? Doesn't ITC 308 Wi-Fi. Doesn't have to be the Wi-Fi. There's a non-Wi-Fi version available. But that then, when I put the gas in, is a complete Keezer. Let's put some gas in. When your kit arrives from BrewKegTap, you will receive 2 of the gas inlets. These are the standard ball lock gas inlets. Remember, G for grey, G for gas. B for black, B for beer. I've never worked out why the grey ones have a black cap and the black ones have a grey cap. It doesn't matter. It's the bulk of the body to bear in mind. So you'll receive 2 of these ball locks. These John Guest adapters, which just screw on. Tip, always check the tightness of these on here to save gas. More importantly, on the black ball locks to save your beer, because if that becomes loose, all the beer will ooze out and fill your Keezer. Now, because I'm using 2 kits, I've got 2 more ball locks and another splitter. But what I'm going to have to do is put the 2 splitters together. That's the popular front of Judea there, with another splitter. If you're going to put 2 lots together, get another one of these, or get a 4-way manifold, which I've got and I can't find. So at the moment, just for a demonstration, I'm going to use those 3 splitters to give me 4 outlets. I'm sorry about the flickery light. Let some daylight in, stop that flicker. Still might get a little bit of flicker, but I've actually been up and changed the light as well, so I don't know what's going on. Anyway, normally you get one of those, so you split it between your 2 kegs. What I've done is just split it between, obviously, the 4 kegs. Worth buying. You won't get this from BrewKegTap, although Johnny might have one on his site. This is just a way of nicely cutting your tubing. Gotta make sure your tubes are cut right. Alright, so next, let's have a look inside. First off, I've put one of those carbonation caps through a 10mm hole and popped a little bit of gas line onto the side. Now, like I said, this will eventually be going to a 4-way manifold here, which will then come out to these, but A, I can't find it, and B, it won't necessarily help you if you're going to put one of these together using a kit from BrewKegTap. So next I'm going to attach my little assembly to here with 2 hands, and then cut some lengths to go between the gas disconnects and attach them to these. Okay, it's not the worst of jobs. All we've done is taken the incoming gas and we've split it between these 4 kegs. Now the only problem with that, without having secondary regulators, obviously is going to be that all the kegs have the same serving pressure. That's not necessarily a bad thing for a Keezer this side. In the beast over there, I have got secondary regulators. The other thing to be aware of, I've kicked the bucket. You little fucker. Right, the other thing to be aware of, if you're using a gas cylinder, they are a little bit like a bomb. You need to have something to secure it upright to stop it falling over. So I've put this little eye bolt in here together with a clip, and a piece of chain will go through the handle, like the way I've got this on here with this cable tie, because I couldn't find any chain at the time. Of course, as soon as I did that, I found a big box of chain. So that then will secure the gas bottle. Ideally, strap the gas bottle to a leg or something, or gaffer tape it to your wife or husband. Actually, probably not. Now that then is our finished Keezer. You will need, obviously, to put kegs with beer in there. These are my alcohol-free drinks. I'm trying to have a few alcohol-free hours a week. I hope that's been useful and helpful. If it has, please give it a thumbs up. I know it's been a bit of a marathon video. It's ever so easy to do. That's I think the point I wanted to get across is it's ever so easy. It's actually quite cheap to do, and the kit that you get from BrewKegTap does have everything you need, and it's easy. By using the Inkbird, you don't even need to do any wiring. All you need to do is put a screw in to hold this, and a couple in behind here to hold this on here. That's all you need to do. There's no real challenging work involved in this at all. I have replaced have I, the empty kegs with some full kegs. So we've got a raspberry wheat, we've got a New England IPA with Sanders yeast, and we have a spring beer from Greg Hughes' book, which people refer to as the Bible, homebrew beer. Now this doesn't matter that it's not connected, because it's only dispensing when pushed into ball lock release. But what we do need to do before anything is obviously need to sanitize all of these lines, and the way we're going to do that is I'm going to use the spare gas on there. I'm going to hook up the gas from here just by using standard ball lock connector. So we now have pressure going into here. This contains Star San. I know it says beer line cleaner, but it's actually Star San. And what I'm going to do is just connect each of these to here and run them through the taps. Obviously I'm going to need 2 hands for that. lines cleaned out and samples poured. This is the raspberry wheat from a long time ago. Has been maturing nicely. This is a New England IPA with Saunders yeast. This is one of the first pours from the keg. Very, very beautiful. And this only went in the keg today, so it's not really going to be carved as such. Came out of a fermenter, a pressure fermenter, Firmzilla. And that is a spring ale, spring beer. So I think we can call that, I've still got a spare tap, we can call that a winner, and it's dead easy to do. So, hope that's been helpful. If it has, please click the thumbs up. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, whatever you're doing, do it safely, and cheers.